Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. Appreciate you all taking the time out of your day, out of this 4th of July. Happy birthday, America. And so, listen, I know a lot of you out there have got the day off of work, so appreciate you once again, taking the time out of your day to watch or listen to Carving Up Live. We've got a great show for you guys tonight. Kevin Durant to the Warriors. It's actually a greater possibility than you might think. I'll get into that in just a second. As well as Jeanie Buss sending out a really, really, really cryptic tweet late last night, or I should say early this morning, into the wee hours of the morning. And I think her tweet says a lot about where the Los Angeles Lakers are at today. I'll get into that, as well as Dak Prescott, my man. Dude has completely changed his physique, his body in this offseason, and I think it's going to be a cause for what is going to be a great season for him. I would go so far as to say an MVP caliber season. I'll get into that, as well as why John Wall is an excellent addition for the Clippers. Didn't really get to talk about that last week, but we'll get into it today, as well as I thought about it over the weekend, and I've come to my conclusion. Baker Mayfield has not played his last game as a Cleveland Brown, and I'll get into that at the end of the show. But first, we're going to start the show today by, well, how we started the last couple of shows and how we're probably going to start the next few shows until a trade is made between the Brooklyn Nets and whoever for one Kevin Wayne Durant. Now, of course, everybody knows last Thursday, hours before free agency, and, good on Kevin Durant. I'll give him this. He did let the Nets know before free agency, so they didn't make a bunch of moves, and then he's like, oh, I want out. But the two teams I talked about that were on his list, the Phoenix Suns and the Miami Heat. And I said, I'm not sure how either works because Phoenix reportedly does not want to give up Devin Booker. Again, they just signed him to a max extension. They don't want to give up Chris Paul. So who do they give up, right? As for the Miami Heat, Kevin Durant reportedly does not want to play for them unless he gets to play with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Kyle Lowry. Well, how on earth did the Heat make that trade not involving any of those three? And then I suggested the other day the Boston Celtics could be a good option. Again, I will put the trade up for you guys. Kevin Durant, the Celtics get Kevin Durant, the Nets get Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and 2 first-round picks. I think the Celtics are still very much a player to go get KD. And there's a team I thought about, and I'm like, I'm not going to say it because, I'm a fan of this team, and people are going to roll their eyes at it. They're going to even roll their eyes further because he played there before. But y'all know exactly who I'm talking about. The Golden State Warriors. Now, Adrian Wojnarowski, the great Woj, said on Thursday when Kevin Durant requested a trade today, chances of this happening are slim to none. It was Golden State and the Knicks were the two franchises that the Nets were most unlikely to do a deal with. The Knicks, obviously, they're not going to trade him across town and have him burn them 4 times a year. And then Golden State for obvious reasons. But then a report came out yesterday on ESPN Radio by Mark J. Spears. Take a listen.
The one team I'm telling you guys is keep an eye on is the Golden State Warriors. Golden State could have the best package for both parties. Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, All-Star Andrew Wiggins, and former number 2 pick James Wiseman. What the Nets want is they want a young All-Star or perhaps a future All-Star. They're all under 30. They also want picks. Maybe the ability to swap picks. But if you can get those 4 players, if I'm the Nets, I'm very, very happy. And for Kevin Durant, the Warriors, they're very familiar with and vice versa. Like, he knows where to live in San Francisco. He knows how the offense works. He knows he can win a championship there. Yeah, he and Steve Kerr would probably have to figure some things out. But with each passing day that this carries on, I've heard the Warriors have interest in terms of a young haul, in terms of people being happy on both sides. To me, the Golden State option is the best option.
So, that shit sent shockwaves. That sent shockwaves throughout the whole NBA world. Like, there's no way. Now, to calm the people down, Another Warriors reporter, Marcus Thompson, who had some fun with Steph Curry during the press conferences during the finals. You can look that up. But he said, Marcus Thompson of The Athletic reported, quote, "The Warriors superstars have been in conversations with Durant. In addition to catching up, the Hall of Fame-bound peers did entertain the idea of a reunion. It was mostly about the stunning nature of it even being possible. The idea of them playing together again had to seem impossible when Durant left in free agency in 2019. It isn't lost on them how life has contrived an opportunity for them to come full circle. They see it like everyone else and talked about it like everyone else. This isn't a case where the Warriors stars are pressing the front office to go acquire Durant. Sources made it clear they are fine defending their title with Wiggins, Poole, and the young players they've been grooming to win with them. But if the universe somehow sets it up so legends reunite, they'd be open to it. With that said, according to multiple sources in the Warriors organizam, a reunion is highly unlikely." Okay, so again, this is a plugged-in Warriors reporter. Two guys, by the way, Mark Spears and Marcus Thompson. I'm here to tell you it is very much on the table, and here's why. Because, first of all, to acquire a player like Kevin Durant, given his salary, you are going to need to match that. Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins is on the last year of a contract that's paying him in excess of $30 million. Regardless if he signs an extension with the Warriors or signs elsewhere, he's going to get more than that because he boosted his trade value. He boosted his overall stock in general as a basketball player throughout this season and certainly in these playoffs and most certainly during the NBA Finals in which he was, in my view, without question, the second best Warrior in the series. Better than Draymond Green, better than Clay, better than even Jordan Poole in some cases. Because of his defense, rebounding, efficient scoring. In Game 5, he was the best player on the floor, period, for both the Warriors and the Celtics because Steph had a bad shooting night. So you got the player to match salaries with. Number 2, talked about future All-Stars. Jonathan Kuminga is going to be a future All-Star. There's no question about it. The kid is 19 years old. You see his ridiculous athleticism. He's long, twitchy, quick. He has all the makings to be one of the great two-way players in this game. Now, he needs to improve his shooting, but doesn't every college kid coming into the NBA, save for a few. Adding on to that, you could have a young asset such as a Jordan Poole or such as, say, a James Wiseman. Now, I'd be shocked if I'm Brooklyn. If I'm Brooklyn, obviously ask for Wiggins, but I'm also getting James Wiseman because I think he also has the ability to be a future All-Star. So when you look at this entire situation, it lines up perfectly. Everything the Nets want, the Warriors have. They've got the All-Star. They've got multiple future All-Stars. Now, preferably, you'd like to keep a few of them. Like, if you trade Wiseman and keep Kuminga, Moody, and Poole, you'd prefer that. Because my thing is, if you've got to trade Poole, Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody, and first-round picks, and Wiggins, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to screw over the future just for an extra 2 years, even though the Warriors would be the heavy, heavy favorite to win the title. But if it is one, even two of those young players to go along with Wiggins and future draft picks, of course I'd be open to that. I think the Warriors players would be open to that. Bottom line, what it comes down to is Kevin Durant open to that? Because it's a little different than 2016. Because Kevin Durant joined in 2016, as Draymond Green talked about with J.J. Redick last week, Kevin Durant was the best player on that team when he joined. Things have changed. Steph has improved defensively. We know the shot making that speaks for itself. He's improved, his body's put on about 10 pounds of muscle. He could score in the paint more efficiently. I mean, Steph has really turned into one of the three best pure scorers in the league. Just because the changes he's made to his body, can take contact better. He can play higher minutes. His conditioning is off the charts. Used to, you can maybe beat up Steph a little bit because, a little skinny. That's what Cleveland did in 2016, and it worked. That's what Kevin Durant's Oklahoma City Thunder did, and it built them a 3-1 lead. You can't do that with Steph anymore. Boston tried. It failed. They did that with Kevin Durant, and they swept Kevin Durant. So what is going to take is the ultimate, quote-unquote, swallowing of pride in NBA history. I mean, we know players that have had to sacrifice greater roles on great teams. Manu Ginobili, for example. But this would be an all-timer, because now you're telling Kevin Durant, who could be the best player on a championship team, which I've told you he can because I've seen him do it before, on what, 25, 6, 7 other teams in the NBA? That's not the case in Golden State. For the first time in Kevin Durant's career, he'd be the 2. He'd be the number 2 option. Even when he was with Golden State, the offense ran through Steph. I put up the stat multiple times. As a matter of fact, for the YouTube and Twitter and Facebook audience, I will put it up again. When you look at double teams received in the 2018 NBA Finals, Steph Curry had 80. Kevin Durant had 2. Yet, in that series, in that NBA Finals, which Kevin Durant mysteriously won a Finals MVP for, Steph outscored him in 3 of the 4 games. The fit we know is perfect, because Kevin Durant is the type of basketball player that can fit with just about anybody. His shooting ability, he moves incredibly without the basketball. He's a better defender than people give him credit for. Solid playmaker, good rebounder, right? I mean, he'll get you maybe like a triple-double a season. You know, like he can do just about everything. Like Draymond Green, again, to quote Draymond Green again, he said a month ago on his podcast, he said, if you had to build the perfect basketball player, you'd build Kevin Durant. But we're talking about the intangibles, the leadership. And this is why I said the Kyrie thing was a disaster waiting to happen. Everything Kevin Durant reportedly wants, it's right in front of him. Or it was right in front of him. Now, he would still have that in Boston, yes. As I suggested, I think the Celtics, I think Boston makes the most sense, aside from the Warriors. Phoenix, sure, but they're not as talented as Golden State. Neither is Miami. By the way, Western Conference. I'm going to talk about the Clippers later in the show. I think the Clippers are going to be a problem. But what do you got in the Western Conference right now? The Lakers are an absolute train wreck. Right? Dallas is still a piece away from real. I mean, we saw that Western Conference Finals. It wasn't even close. That was the most lopsided 5-game series I think I've ever seen in a Western Conference Finals between my Warriors and the Mavericks. Mavs are still a few pieces away, as great as Luka Doncic is. Memphis, still too young. It's really Clippers, and that's about all the competition KD has. Whereas if he stays in the East, now you got to deal with, let's just say, for the sake of argument, he's staying in Brooklyn. You've got Boston. You've got Miami. You've got Milwaukee. You've got some serious contenders out east that are, Philadelphia is not, I don't think is a contender, but they can push you 6 or 7 games. So I'm just saying, if Kevin Durant wants a great all-star teammate, he'd have multiple all-star teammates, but Hall of Fame level coach, set culture, as I talked about last week, he was there. And he can come back. Golden State's got the assets. Now the question is, for the Warriors, are the Nets going to ask them to basically give up all their assets? If the Warriors have to give up all of them, I'm not down with that. You got to keep a little bit of youth, right? To be able to develop and see what they can turn out to be. But the fact that people are shocked that the Warriors are going out and trying to get KD, I don't understand the shock. Not just from the Warriors' perspective, but from a champion's perspective. You don't win the championship and rest of your laurels. You try to get better. Never forget in 2018 when the Warriors shocked the NBA world after their second straight championship, third in 4 years. And what did they do? They signed DeMarcus Cousins. Now, Boogie Cousins wasn't the Boogie Cousins of old, and unfortunately has never been the Boogie Cousins of old since that Achilles injury. But they were aggressive, and they went out and got him. Kind of a similar situation here. Again, as the Marcus Thompson report says, the Warriors superstars would be, they could have never imagined that this possibility would even come to fruition. That, wait a second, 3 years after you leave, we got a chance to bring you back? It's like the prodigal son almost. If we're going biblical, I think it works. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of, does Kevin Durant have the self-awareness to know that he can be the best player in a championship team, although he would not be in Golden State, and to know, and this would hurt, I can't lead a team to a championship. Let's be real right now. Without Golden State, Kevin Durant's Charles Barkley. 1 finals appearance, an MVP, ridiculously talented, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the 35 greatest basketball players of all time. But you never really saw Charles as a winning player. Same with Kevin Durant. But I think a Warriors reunion would be perfect. And if it were to occur, oh my goodness. You thought I was insufferable when we won the championship. Well, we may have to throw a similar type of party on this show, on Carving It Up Live, should that occur. But we'll just have to see how it plays out over the next few weeks. I mean, who knows? A KD trade could be done 48 hours from now, 24 hours from now. Who knows? I mean, it was 6 years ago to the day, July 4th, that KD announced and shocked the NBA world, shocked the world in general, that he was going to Golden State. What was it called? My Next Chapter, I think he wrote in the Players Tribune. And it shocked the world. My man, Philip Chenault, is in the comments. He says it's going to be great for the NBA if the Warriors get KD again because it will put more pressure on other teams to make great teams to beat the Warriors with KD. I think it's a good point because, Philip, that's exactly what happened in 2017. Timberwolves got Jimmy Butler. Rockets got Chris Paul. Oklahoma City got Paul George and Carmelo Anthony. And it's a great point. And that's what it did. People talking about, it was never even close. Yes, I listen. The 2017 Warriors team, nobody was beating that team. Even the Cavaliers, who I've showed the stats in the past. I think I did it back in January. The 2017 Cavs were actually better than the team the year prior that had won the championship. But Golden State was so much better than the year prior. It was a 5-game series. But 2018, people forget, Warriors were on the brink against Houston. They had dealt with some internal stuff. If the Timberwolves, if Jimmy Butler stays healthy the whole season, they get a higher seed. Again, the Rockets came right on the doorstep before Chris Paul got hurt. Many have made the argument if Chris Paul's healthy, they beat the Warriors. I'm not a subscriber to that belief, but hey, I get where they would come from there, the way he'd been playing in that series. But that's a good point, especially when you think about some of the offseason moves that have shocked a lot of people these last 3 years. I mean, people thought Kawhi to the Clippers was a possibility, but the fact that he convinced Paul George behind the scenes to come join him there. So, but that'd be interesting. Again, I'm going to talk some Clippers later in the show because I love the John Wall move, but I'll save that for later. Let's transition now to the Los Angeles Lakers. Again, I said going into the playoffs, we're not talking any Lakers outside of coaching changes, and we did with the firing of Frank Vogel and the hiring of Darvin Ham. Outside of that, we didn't talk Lakers because, frankly, I didn't really care to talk about them. I don't want to talk about a 33-win team when there's teams trying to, go win a championship. But we could talk about them now. They're the Dallas Cowboys of the NBA. By the way, I'm going to talk about the Cowboys in the next segment. It just shows you where we're at in sports. Look, it's the teams that are the most drama-filled, have the greatest history. We're going to talk about them. If I talked more baseball on the show, I'd talk more Yankees, not just because they're winning, but because they're the most interesting organization in Major League Baseball. But Los Angeles Lakers, Jeanie Buss, the owner of the team, the daughter of the late great Dr. Jerry Buss, and late last night, or I should say, in the wee hours of the morning, she put out this tweet for the podcast audience. I will read it for you guys. Jeanie Buss last night at 2:11 a.m. Eastern time. So I guess it was late last night in Los Angeles. She said, quote, "I miss KB." He's talking about Kobe Bryant. "He would understand and explain everything that I'm not allowed to. Honestly, he was the greatest Laker ever. He understood team over self, meaning your rewards would come if you valued team goals over your own, then everything would fall into place. All can reply." Okay, so It's kind of a lot to unpack there. First of all, I agree. Kobe's the greatest Laker of all time. I put him just a little bit above Magic Johnson. For those of you that are like, well, what about your top 10? You have Kareem number 3. Kareem is the third greatest basketball player ever, but he did win a championship in Milwaukee. And so if we're talking about purely Los Angeles Lakers, Kobe, for a number of reasons that I'll get into, once I make like a top 10 list at some point in the future. But to her larger point about how she wishes she could confide in Kobe Bryant. And it still sounds just weird, even 2.5 years later, that he's really gone. But I think what this goes to show you is that Jeanie Buss, and I would give her credit for possibly recognizing this if I'm maybe I'm reading into this tweet too much, but she's essentially saying like, look, I don't know who to trust at this point anymore in running the Lakers. And this has been my criticism of Jeanie Buss. This has always been my criticism of Jeanie Buss. She gives too many voices to too many people. Have your closest confidants. Years ago, Kobe Bryant, now Magic Johnson. I still don't really trust Rob Pelinka. I don't think he's the greatest. I don't think he's good of a GM as people give him credit for. But you've got the Rambuses and other outside voices. Phil Jackson, who was one of the worst executives in NBA history with the Knicks, yet she confides in him. That's always been my criticism of Jeanie. And maybe now she's sort of recognizing that. That, hey, the voices that, heck, even in recent years, even the last couple, she's given too much of a voice to LeBron James. Listen, LeBron's the second greatest basketball player of all time, in my view. But that doesn't change the fact that as a quote-unquote player/GM, he has made some horrendous moves. He very well could become the next Michael Jordan. Maybe not as bad as Michael in terms of an owner, but, I mean, you look at some of those contracts. He got guys in Cleveland, J.R. Smith and Tristan Thompson. I mean, it was some rough sledding for Cleveland. And same with the Lakers. Why on earth, when you have all these injuries, you get the 7th seed, you take a couple games off of the eventual Western Conference champion Phoenix Suns, do you get desperate all of a sudden to go get Russell Westbrook? A move that I said the second it was made, this is going to be an absolute disaster. A year later, they're trying to move Westbrook for another disaster, Kyrie Irving. Now, the part of the tweet that I really don't get, that I'm not sure how to read into it, is where she says right at the beginning, he, talking about Kobe Bryant, would understand and explain everything that I'm not allowed to. And then, of course, people are going to say, well, what are you not allowed to say? I don't know. What it goes to show me is it confirms what I already believed, is that this Lakers franchise is about as desperate and as poorly run a franchise in sports as in terms of the iconic brands, the iconic franchises in American team sports. Lakers might be at the very top. The Yankees have had their issues ever since Mr. Steinbrenner passed away, but today they have by a mile the best record in baseball. Okay, then they're the favorites to win the World Series for the 28th time, and that just pains me as a Red Sox fan. Good win over the Rays, by the way, Boston. But the Cowboys, in a similar sense, Jerry Jones giving way too many voices to way too many people, but then in some instances making bad decisions himself as a general manager. Both the Cowboys and the Lakers, I've said this for a few months now, have become unbelievably insular. Jeanie Buss, who does she confide in? Magic Johnson, Laker. Rob Pelinka, the agent of a former Laker, Kobe Bryant. Phil Jackson, coach twice of the Los Angeles Lakers. And then in Dallas, a bunch of their coaches played for the Cowboys. Stephen Jones and his kids. It's like, Jerry, just hire a real GM. Similar situation here with Jeanie. Anybody who seriously thinks, I don't think that many people do. Heck, I don't even think that many Laker fans do. But anybody who seriously looks at this team and thinks championship or bust is not being honest with themselves. Because let's say, for the sake of argument, they make the move. Westbrook for Kyrie, and reportedly the Nets are open to that kind of deal. I'm not sure why, but they are. Let's say they make that deal. So what you are banking on, and I've always said, I cannot call you a championship contender if I have more questions than answers. Can't do it. I said that all year last year about the Brooklyn Nets, and they got swept in the first round. Same with the Lakers. You're talking about you're going to have to rely on three guys, your three best players, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and possibly Kyrie Irving. You're going to have to rely on all three to stay healthy, to play minimum 60 games. And I can't count on any of them to do that. For LeBron, the issue is he's 37 years old, right? He's not really supposed to play 60 games a year. Certainly not going into year 20. No, he's still a great player. Still might be the third best player on the world behind Steph and Giannis. But in terms of durability, it's been a little shaky these last 4 years. Outside of the championship season, every other year that he's been in Los Angeles, he's had injury problems. Anthony Davis. I always say AD does not stand for Anthony Davis. It stands for always down. And when you're talking about a guy who said, I haven't shot a basketball in 2 months, it's like, whoa, time out. You shot under 20%. I think you shot 18% from three-point range. And after your initial, rest from the season, you didn't think to maybe get in the gym with my man lethal shooter Chris Matthews or with some other shooting coach, with the Lakers even, and work on your jump shot, work on your free throw shooting, which used to be in the mid-80s. Now it's down to the 60s. That tells me not enough repetition. That tells me you're not putting the time in to your body and into your game. And then Kyrie Irving. There's a number of issues. He ain't going to play 60 games. Number one, he also has injury problems. That goes back to his college days at Duke. You have, last year was the vaccine stuff. The year before that, it was randomly taking 2 weeks off, not telling anybody. But then they find him chilling at the club. But that's neither here nor there, right? It's always something with Kyrie Irving. You never know where he's at mentally, physically, emotionally. I like their depth. I kind of like the moves the Lakers have made in free agencies. Young wings who can shoot. Perfect for LeBron James. Question is, how many games is LeBron going to play? Rookie head coach Darvin Ham. I like Darvin Ham, but he's a rookie head coach. This is what the Lakers are today. They are best case scenario. The sixth best team in the West, seventh. It's a poorly run franchise, and I think Jeanie Buss's tweet kind of exemplified that. Let's see. John says Kobe, and he's got the snake for the Black Mamba. Rest in peace. Of course, John Rivera, anytime I mention anything involving not even the Yankees, but just baseball, says, let's go Yankees. I hate the Yankees. Philip says, Anthony Davis should be a top 3 player, if not the best player in the NBA. He just doesn't have the mindset. Frankly, I agree. Because, by the way, Kevin Garnett echoed those sentiments the other day. He said Anthony Davis should be an MVP by now. Well, we saw what this dude did at Kentucky in college. We saw, those years in New Orleans. You had those flashes. I thought he was robbed of Defensive Player of the Year in 2018 by one of my least favorite players in basketball, Rudy Gobert. And I ripped that trade with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who get worked on every trade they make. But the issue with Anthony Davis, right, has never been talent. He was the number 1 player in high school, number 1 pick in the draft. You look back just 2 years ago when the Lakers were in the NBA Finals, it was a toss-up about who would be the Finals MVP, and then LeBron had that big Game 5, albeit the Lakers lost, and I think he had a triple-double or a near triple-double in Game 6 when they clinched the title over Miami, and that pretty much decided it. But Anthony Davis was phenomenal in the playoffs in the Lakers championship year. But then the following season, he came in out of shape. And then last season, he came in out of shape. And then this offseason, I haven't shot a basketball in 2 months. Huh? I just saw Steph Curry coming off of a grueling championship run where he was unquestionably the most used warrior in terms of usage rate. Any stat you look at, Steph Curry was the man, had the ball in his hands a lot. Lot of work that guy to do to go win a championship. 10 days later, you can look it up. He's in the gym working on his body. He's not shooting yet, but he's working on his body. That's the difference. That's the difference. Not saying Steph Curry isn't talented. You don't shoot the basketball like that, and you're not talented. But it's all between the ears. Always has been, always will be. That's why I have questions about certain guys like James Harden. Now, good news about James Harden. Seen some videos. He's in the gym. He's getting the work in. He's working on his body. Great. Finally, I've wanted to see this from James Harden. Usually he comes in at the offseason and he's got a gut on him, if we're being honest. That's why I have questions about the Lakers, Anthony Davis, yada, yada, yada. It's not good. It is not good. And this tweet, if I were a Lakers fan, would not make me feel any better. That the owner is going on Twitter and voicing her concerns in terms of basically, I don't know what to do. Kobe was really the only guy I could trust. Well, that's part of the problem. You're giving too many voices to people. It's not a good time to be a Laker fan. It really has been ever since Jeannie's father passed away in 2013. It's been literally outside of the championship year. It's been downhill ever since. Okay, so listen, we've got so much going on in sports right now. Again, it is just crazy that we've had. This is what I love about sports in the last few years, and we really took it for granted up until COVID. I remember on the show, I just started carving it up live, or actually, it wasn't even live yet; it was just a podcast. And COVID hit, and it's every day. What am I going to talk about? Because there's no sports. Thank God for The Last Dance. Thank God for the NFL draft. That was about it. And then once training camp hit, that was just like, oh my goodness, and the NBA came back late July, early August, around that same time, and then we got back on our feet. But even in this period, I kind of call it the dead period in sports. We usually have two. Between the Super Bowl and March Madness, so about a month, we kind of have a little bit of a dead period in sports news. And then from the end of the NBA Finals until NFL training camp. Not this year. You got NBA free agency, and you got an NFL story. A couple NFL stories I want to get to today. The first one involving yet another drama-filled organization, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, anybody that knows me knows I've got a very mixed relationship, if you will, with my, I shouldn't say my Cowboys, the Cowboys. I've said for about 6 months, 6 months or so, that I kind of got a love-hate relationship with the team, with the organization in particular. I don't really have anything much against the players, but I've always said, if my man Dak Prescott leaves, I'm going with him. Okay, I don't know Dak. He didn't play at my favorite college or anything like that, but the way this guy carries himself, his play on the field, I think has been grossly underrated ever since he came into the NFL. What he's had to put on his broad shoulders ever since he came in the NFL with this franchise. I'm a Dak guy. And so Dak leaves, goes to now Philadelphia. That'd be hard to stomach. I don't know how I'd do that because I don't like the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't like their fans, and I make no bones about it. But it actually has to do with Dak in particular. So on his Instagram stories the other day, he posted a picture with some of his teammates, guys like Dalton Schultz, who I guess is playing for the Cowboys this year, and et cetera, et cetera. You can see CeeDee Lamb, that picture, and I think Jalen Tolbert, the rookie that they drafted this year. But you see that picture, loading 2022, ... says the caption. It looks like they're working out at the University of Miami football facilities. And Dak Prescott's in the middle. Again, I apologize for the podcast audience, but what happened to Dak? Okay, dude has worked on his body big time, and it's huge. And, I heard Dak talking about in OTAs that he had kind of taken off some of that, the baby fat, right? He had changed his diet. He wasn't eating to use his words, what he was eating in college. In college, I'm about to go into college. You can eat just about anything, right? And still be fine. Dak's changed his diet. And I've said this about Klay Thompson with my Warriors. This is a big, big offseason for Dak, and it looks like he's clearly taken advantage of it. Because for the first time really in 3 years, Dak has had a normal, quote-unquote, normal offseason. 2019 was his last normal offseason. 2020, COVID. OTAs were virtual. I mean, there was no preseason. It was just kind of the NFL was just doing whatever it could just to keep football alive. And then you have last year, he's still rehabbing from a career-threatening ankle injury. And so now he's fully healthy. He had surgery on that shoulder, which he that lat muscle, I think is what it's called, that he injured last year in training camp. Right? So he's ready to go. Physically, he looks the best he's ever looked. Looks a little bit like Ezekiel Elliott last year. The work he did in his body. The problem with Zeke is he tore his PCL in the middle of the season and lost all explosiveness he had. And I'm not sure how much explosiveness Zeke has when he's healthy, period. But the thing with Dak Prescott that I don't think he gets enough credit for, and what you want to see from franchise quarterbacks, is that since he's come into the NFL, aside from 1 year, which was his second year, he's gotten better every season. His rookie year, he had a passer rating of about 105 passer rating. That dropped all the way. It kind of plummeted a little bit to an 86 passer rating year 2. Like I said, year 2, it was rough. Cowboys didn't make the playoffs. Dak didn't play particularly well. He was throwing for, I know there was a stretch he didn't throw for 200 yards a game. It was rough sledding. And then 2018, he comes back, leads the Cowboys back to the playoffs. His passer rating goes from 86 to 97. In year 4, 2019, his passer rating goes from 97 to 99. It stays at 99 in 2020 when he had that ankle injury in the 5 games he played, and then it goes back up to 104 last year. And so the thing is, I think with the Cowboys, do I think they're a Super Bowl contender? No, I do not. I do not think if you have Mike McCarthy at head coach, I think if you have an offensive line that has one elite player on it, Tyron Smith's done. I love the guy. Love him. He's done. The injuries have come with greater regularity. You have the issues with his back and his knee, quote unquote, old man injuries, as I heard my man over my shoulder with the book you can see, Andre Iguodala, talk about before. That's what Tyron Smith's dealing with. You add to the fact that the defense has one elite player. I'm not in the Trayvon Diggs thing, guys. I think he is a phenomenal athlete. I think he's going to get 6 picks just based on the fact that he was a wide receiver at Alabama before Nick Saban converted him into a defensive back. Micah Parsons is the only elite player on that defense, folks. DeMarcus Lawrence is a great run stopper, but the Cowboys are paying him whatever they're paying, like $15 million or whatever it is, to go get the quarterback. He's not really done that in recent years since he signed that big contract in 2018. So the Cowboys are not a Super Bowl contender. They're not. But I think for Dak Prescott, you could see, and I'm not predicting he wins MVP, but I think you could see some MVP level numbers from Dak. Because, first of all, last year, with Mike McCarthy at head coach, with a receiving core that did not have a true number one, Amari Cooper's a phenomenal route runner. You cannot count on him week to week. CeeDee Lamb, up and down, up and down. He has a bad case of the drops one week. The next week he go get you 120 and a couple touchdowns. And he just kind of disappears into the fold. Watch the playoff game. He had some bad drops in that one. And then you have Michael Gallup, who I think is a great deep threat and is a great, red zone target given his size and his catch radius. But overall, he's not a number one receiver, although I am glad Dallas kept him. But I think what you're going to see this year from Dak Prescott, he's going to move around better because now last year he kind of had to get over the mental hurdle of the ankle injury and do I trust myself running? Well, now he can. The Cowboys said they want him to run more, which I said in the show I don't love. I don't want Dak to run more. I want him to be able to move in the pocket better. And I think you're going to see that this year from him. His arm strength is better than people give him credit for. I've said the stat over and over and over on the show. Last year, he had the same completion percentage on throws down the field. And for you, those of you asking, what's a throw down the field? 20 yards or more. He had the same completion percentage on throws 20 yards or more down the field as the man who won the most valuable player, Aaron Rodgers. That they both tied for the 4th best completion percentage on that stat. Throws 20 plus yards down the field. You have that aspect. You have the ridiculous accuracy. And you add to the fact that despite having what is, let's be honest, a subpar offensive line, Dak Prescott, if I could find the stat, here it is. Dak in games in 2021 in which there was a pressure percentage of 15% or more. Got that? So games where the plays that he drops back on, there's 15% pressure or more. There were 5 of those games. Dak in those games threw for 1,400 yards, had a 74% completion percentage, a passer rating of 120, 14 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a 4-1 record. And that was last year when it was probably his least mobile year, coming off the ankle injury. Now his ankle is totally good. Not saying the ankle was bothering him last year, but what it was, talking about, similar with Anthony Davis, kind of the between the ears thing. And we know Dak is one of the more mentally tough players that playing in the NFL. So he's overcome that hurdle. The Cowboys coach has said he's moving around phenomenally at practice, at OTAs, and I'm sure the same will be true during training camp. But if Dak stays healthy, knock on wood for that, we could see an MVP level season. I'm talking 40 touchdowns or so, maybe 10 picks or less. High passer rating, maybe he competes. We know Aaron Rodgers is the passer rating king. We know that because Aaron Rodgers does not take risks. Dak can maybe compete with him in that category. Again, if the Cowboys coaches, if Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy could get it through their thick heads, let Dak throw the ball down the field. Because when he does, statistically, he's the 4th most accurate quarterback in football in that category. Let him throw it down the field. Let him, give him the opportunity to move outside the pocket and make plays. Great arm, unbelievably accurate, great leadership intangibles. Listen, Philadelphia is a better football team today than Dallas. They are. A.J. Brown is better than any receiver Dallas has. Their offensive line is most certainly better. Just look at the running game. It's not even close between Philly and Dallas. The defense has, two players from that Georgia defense last year in Nakobe Dean and Jordan, I think it's Jordan Davis was his name, the big defensive tackle who I think is going to be a superstar in this league. Same about Nakobe Dean. I think he's going to be phenomenal. All the offseason acquisitions, Philly's going to be a problem. That said, I think Dallas wins the division simply because they have the best quarterback. And we know last year, you look at who won the divisions in the NFL, the best quarterback won the division. I think the same will remain true this year. Okay, Giants aren't doing anything. Washington could. I like Washington's roster. But this is Carson Wentz we're talking about, and he had what I called on this show the perfect roster in Indianapolis. And he choked away a playoff berth in 2 straight games against the Raiders and definitely against the Jaguars. That's why I think the Colts, by the way, not to change subject too much, but that's why I think the Colts are a legit Super Bowl threat out of the AFC. Tennessee got worse, and then Jacksonville or Houston are in a complete rebuild. Indianapolis could make some noise. I think Indianapolis is a legit threat to maybe be a 1 or 2 seed in the AFC, but that's another conversation we can have later. So yeah, it's look, at the end of the day, I think we're due for a big season for my man Rain Dakota Prescott. Again, you see the bobblehead. Let's get the bobblehead going. Use it what it's for, the bobbling head. But look, again, for Dallas, Dak it's kind of like what I said about the Lakers a couple of seasons ago. All I liked about the Lakers was LeBron James. That was it. All I like about this Cowboy team is Dak Prescott. Last year, all I liked about the Raiders team, although they did have some talented players, good pass rush, solid receiving core which got much better with the acquisition of Devontae Adams. All I liked about that Raiders team last year was Derek Carr. Derek Carr and Dak are really the same guy. They've had mediocre coaching staffs, now Derek's had to play in a brutal division. I'll give the edge to Derek there. Both have excellent arms. Dak's more accurate than Derek Carr. Both have had a major injury. Derek broke his leg in his 3rd year. Dak broke his ankle in his 5th year. They have the same number. Both wear number 4. Leadership from both guys is off the charts. Both have to deal with absolute tire fires in terms of organizational stability. So I think Derek Carr, that's why I'm such a huge fan of both guys. I think if you gave them the stability of an organization like San Francisco, they'd win a Super Bowl. Either guy would win a Super Bowl. Heck, the Niners almost got to a 2nd Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. I'll leave that there. And who knows? Now, I did read today, speaking of the Niners, or a few days ago from Peter Schrager, great reporter at Fox Sports and on Good Morning Football and the NFL Network, that he said that Trey Lance is really winning over the Niners locker room, which is saying a lot because for all of Jimmy G's flaws, that locker room loves him. Loves him. They talk about his leadership. He gets along with everybody. If Trey Lance is winning the locker room over, again, keep in mind, Jimmy Garoppolo today is still a Niner. He's recovering from, I think, shoulder surgery. I don't think he's quite ready to throw yet, but he's coming close. That says a lot for a guy who I loved coming out of North Dakota State, but I kind of backed off a little bit this summer when there were reports about his throwing mechanics aren't great. The Niners are a little bit concerned about it. John Lynch, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, again, I thought Trey Lance, when it was all said and done, would have the best career of any of the 2021 first-round quarterbacks, and I had my concerns about that, but I haven't sold my stock quite yet on Trey Lance. I was all in on Tua in 2020, and I was not in at all on Joe Burrow. Safe to say I made a mistake there, but I was all in Herbert, and he's been magnificent. But I'm not in on Mac Jones, and I'm not moving off that position because Mac Jones is not a franchise quarterback. That's another conversation for another day. I can't wait for the NFL to start, though. We are. I mean, I saw the on the NFL memes on Instagram. They posted that this is the last month without football until March of 2023, and it's like, oh man, we're so close. College football, NFL. I've last year the NFL teased it as this is going to be the greatest season in NFL history. And I don't know if it was that, but it was, I mean, the last 7 playoff games all came down to the last minute, basically. Most cases were won on a walk-off. But in this case, this might top it. If everybody, knock on wood big time, if everybody's healthy, this could be a spectacular NFL season. I cannot wait to talk about it on this show and have some great guests on and engage with you guys in the comments because we all know I love my NBA. I love Major League Baseball. Yeah, I love college football. Love all the sports. But nothing beats the NFL. Not just in sports, but in television. I mean, 91 of the top 100 broadcasts on television last year were NFL games. That is remarkable. But the league is dying is what I heard. That's neither here nor there. All right. Shifting now back to the NBA, then we'll come back to the NFL for one more topic. The Los Angeles Clippers, I'm here to tell you, are the biggest threat in the Western Conference to my Golden State Warriors in terms of the Warriors' chance to repeat next year. Because the Clippers went out. Yes, they retained guys like Nick Batum and that Amir Coffey, who's a nice player, gave him some good minutes last year with all the injuries they had. And they just added last week John Wall. I wanted to talk about John Wall last week, but I couldn't because of the Kevin Durant news and all the other free agency stuff going on, and Kyrie Irving, obviously. I got some time to talk about it now because I really wanted to address it. I think this is a phenomenal move by the Clippers. I've never been the biggest John Wall fan throughout his career. I think he's wildly athletic. I worry a little bit about his shooting ability. His leadership intangibles, I think, have been questionable at best, but for what it's worth, his teammates in Washington seem to like him, even though he did appear a little distant from guys in Houston. But I never liked John Wall as the number one guy, which he was in Washington, and it kind of stunted the growth in some ways of Bradley Beal. And so once John Wall, unfortunately, nobody wishes injury, once John Wall unfortunately got hurt in 2019, we really saw the blossoming of Bradley Beal, which is why it made me sick to my stomach that Bradley Beal isn't going to play for contender. He's going to be stuck with the Washington Wizards for the next 5 years, winning 37 games a year. I mean, it's like, dang, this is such a great player. He's got to play with a title contending team. And especially in his prime. But we can talk about that another day. But John Wall, you're talking about a guy who the athleticism has waned. He's had major injuries to his Achilles. I think he had an ACL injury as well. So injuries has kind of been the downfall of John Wall. But you add him to a Clippers team, which now what it does is it moves Reggie Jackson to the bench, which we all know. Reggie Jackson is more comfortable coming off the bench if you look at his days in Oklahoma City when he was the backup point guard to Russell Westbrook. I mean, the year Kevin Durant won MVP in 2014, and Reggie Jackson was backing up Russ, he was great. Detroit, not so much because he was kind of the lead guy. Reggie Jackson is better suited coming off the bench. Gives him a spark. He has improved his shot-making ability, his ability to create shots off the dribble, getting other guys involved. Like, he really works for Ty Lue's offense, and he works in the Clippers culture. So you add John Wall to that, putting Reggie Jackson in a more comfortable situation, and you give, for the first time with Kawhi and PG together, I want to emphasize together, with the Clippers, they have a true point guard. Because when Paul George and Kawhi first got to Los Angeles, who was the starting point guard? Patrick Beverley, the pest, the number one pest of the NBA. So it's going to be some rocky sledding, because Patrick Beverley, we don't exactly look at him as a guy who gets other dudes involved. His role is to make some timely shots. He's a decent three-point shooter and get in the other team's head and annoy the whiz out of them. That's not what they needed necessarily in terms of from a starting point guard. Well, now they have that in John Wall, a guy who controls the pace. He's always been at the top of the NBA in terms of assists. So, and he knows, John Wall's got the self-awareness to know, those are the guys. I'm the number 3 here. I'm the number 3. So given the moves the Clippers have made this offseason, given how John Wall, I think, is going to fit Ty Lue. I mean, again, I really like the kid Amir Coffey that played last year. But if Amir Coffey is playing in Indiana, we'd have never heard of him. That's what the Clippers did last year with Kawhi not playing a dribble because he had a torn ACL, and Paul George having the shoulder injury, and he didn't come back till there was 2 weeks left in the season. The fact that the Clippers were in position to make the playoffs is incredible, in my view. So you bring those two guys back. You hope that they're healthy, because injuries have been a little bit a concern for both Paul George and especially Kawhi Leonard. And you add John Wall, fresh legs, hasn't played basketball in a couple of years. He'll be ready to go. Maybe he'll be a little rusty out the start, but after, I think, Christmas, the Clippers will be on a roll. Great perimeter defense, excellent shot makers. Ty Lue is one of the best adjustment coaches in the NBA. That's the only team in the Western Conference, for me, as a Warriors fan, that I feel threatened by. Denver would give us issues with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. coming back. Memphis, yeah, they gave us problems last year, but they're still young, and John Morant needs a second star. And I'm not sure John Morant is as big of a contributor to winning as we give him credit for. I think it has a lot to do more with the Memphis culture and things of that nature, as great of a player as John Morant is. Luka doesn't have a second star in Dallas. I can't take them seriously as a threat to the Warriors. But look, at the end of the day, all that gets canceled out if Kevin Durant comes to Golden State. I'll leave it at that. It's still a possibility, folks. It's still a possibility. Last topic of the day, circling back to the NFL. I can't wait for NFL. The Cleveland Browns have been a team of discussion, to say the very least, this offseason, given the situation with Baker Mayfield, which dissolved quickly, and the highly controversial trade and even more controversial contract that they gave to one Deshaun Watson, who, as it stands today, still has 4 suits against him, lawsuits filed against him for sexual assault. Or I'm sorry, I think it was sexual misconduct. Now, the 20 he settled with, but again, I thought he was trying to clear his name. It's neither here nor there. The point is, the Browns have been an absolute train wreck, what's new? And they did awful business. And you guys know I'm not a Baker Mayfield fan. Never have been since his days at Oklahoma. I think his intangibles are putrid. And I'm not sure in terms of talent, I'm not sure he's in the top 20 in the NFL. But the one thing I will give the kid is he is accurate as accurate can be. He's not Drew Brees accurate, but in terms of being able to spread the ball across the field, kind of being like a point guard type of quarterback, he's pretty good. He's a starter in the NFL. I've never one time said on this show that Baker Mayfield is is not a starter in the NFL. I've always talked about the group, the low-end starter, high-end backup group. That's a group that includes a guy that's on the Browns roster today, Jacoby Brissett. I've always liked Jacoby Brissett for what he is, but I've never thought he's a franchise quarterback. That's the only hope the Browns have at quarterback at this moment. But I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, okay, would it make sense for the Browns, given that Baker has no suitors? The two teams that have been linked to the Browns the most for Baker Mayfield have been the Carolina Panthers and the Seattle Seahawks. We haven't heard anything about Seattle in a minute. I mean, it looks like they're going to go with Drew Lock. And that's a move that even the U.S. Open ripped on Twitter. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go check that out on Twitter. And then the Carolina Panthers, who have the other bust in the 2018 draft, Sam Darnold, who is an even bigger bust than Baker Mayfield was. And I love Sam Darnold coming out of USC, but he has not panned out whatsoever. We haven't heard any rumblings about Carolina. And the rumblings we have heard, you've had guys like Robbie Anderson on the team who commented on a post that reported that the Carolina Panthers were interested in Baker, and he commented, no, with numerous O's. So he doesn't want Baker. I don't think the Panthers players want Baker. So he's just stuck in Cleveland. And the real sort of problem here is that he's on his rookie option, the team option, and he's getting paid $19 million a year, and he's going to be a free agent next season. So the Browns going to, I mean, this tells you how bad at business they are. Are they going to give whatever it was, $30-something million to Deshaun Watson this year, even though he probably won't play? Because the thing about Deshaun's contract, the one good thing the Browns did is the majority of the money is going to be used in the following years after the season, because they knew he's probably not going to play this year. So I'll give the Browns that. But why would you even trade from the first place? But they're going to pay a guy, whatever it is, $30-40 million, who's not even going to play, Deshaun Watson, and then pay $19 million to a guy who doesn't want to play for them but has no suitors, Baker Mayfield. Or you would be paying him $19 million to leave and he become a free agent. So that's $50-60 million to guys who aren't even going to play for you. So if I'm the Browns, this is another situation similar to what I talked about with Kevin Durant at the beginning of today's show. This is going to have to be a massive swallowing of pride moment where they're going to have to go to Baker, call him, reach out to his agent, heck, even have lunch together, have dinner together, have an in-person meeting and say, Baker, we screwed up. We screwed up. And say, look, and just be honest. Your stock isn't great right now. Nobody's calling us to trade for you. You're going to make $19 million this season. And say this, look, we like Jacoby, but you're better than Jacoby. Baker Mayfield's a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. And say, this is a win-win for both situations. For us, a better opportunity to win games with you as opposed to Jacoby Brissett. And for you, hey, you're healthy. You're coming off a shoulder injury. You can boost your stock. And next year, choose where you go as opposed to getting traded. Because if Baker gets traded to a bad situation like Carolina or Seattle and flunks, which he would, he's a backup quarterback for the rest of his career. He's done as a starter in the NFL. Whereas if he comes into Cleveland, plays well, they rely on the running game, just like they did in 2020, which got them all the way to the playoffs and a playoff win over their rival Pittsburgh. Baker boosts his stock. Baker gets paid next offseason. However, he gets traded elsewhere or he doesn't play this season, Baker's stock goes nowhere but down. So this is a win-win situation for both the Browns and Baker. Because right now, it's a lose-lose for both sides. Because if Baker doesn't play this season or gets traded to a crappy franchise, he's going to be a backup. As for the Browns, they got a better shot at making the playoffs with Baker as opposed to Jacoby Brissett. But what it all circles back to is Browns, even if you knew you were going to trade for for Deshaun Watson and make that risky move, don't piss Baker Mayfield off of the process. We know he's thin-skinned. We know he holds grudges. We know he's not the easiest guy to get along with. Don't burn the bridge knowing that we may kind of need him should Deshaun Watson get suspended for an extended period of time. But it's the Haslam family, and few business that they do turns out well. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Be sure to catch the Carving It Up podcast as well on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Hope everybody has a great 4th of July and enjoy your day off. I'm assuming most of you got the day off of work, so enjoy time off with family. Enjoy some fireworks. Keep those pets, as much away from the fireworks as possible. I've got a cat. I'm sure many of you have pets out there. We all know, our furry friends do not like fireworks, so be sure to keep them, safe and sound as much as you can away from those. And have a great day, everybody. See you all on Thursday. God bless you all. Peace out. Where's getting KD? You know that, right? Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.